Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, a Boeing 777 with 239 souls on board, lifted off from Kuala Lumpur, heading for Beijing. It was supposed to be a routine red-eye flight, the kind that takes off every night without anyone paying attention. But less than an hour later, the plane vanished from civilian radar screens, gone as if it had been erased from the sky. That single moment sparked the greatest mystery in modern aviation history. Governments scrambled, experts rushed to explain, and search planes began scouring the Gulf of Southeast Asia. But in the middle of this chaos, one lone voice cut through the silence. An oil rig worker claimed he had seen something terrifying: a massive aircraft flying low, burning bright in the night sky at the exact time MH370 disappeared. If his words are true, they could have been the first real clue. So why was his testimony ignored? And what really happened to MH370? It was 42 minutes past midnight when Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur. The Boeing 777 rose into the night sky, bound for Beijing on what should have been a calm overnight journey. Inside, 227 passengers settled into their seats: families, business travelers, students returning to China after holiday. 12 crew members moved quietly through the cabin, preparing for the long haul north. Everything about that takeoff looked routine. In the cockpit sat Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a 53-year-old veteran with more than 18,000 hours of flying experience. He knew this route by heart. Beside him was First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, just 27 years old, making his first unsupervised flight in a Boeing 777. The difference in their experience could not have been greater, yet together they were responsible for one of the safest, most reliable aircraft in the world. For both men, this was supposed to be just another night's work. At 1:07 a.m., the ACAR system sent its final routine transmission. Everything appeared normal, nothing out of place. 12 minutes later came the last words ever heard from the cockpit: "Good night, Malaysian 370. The farewell was calm and professional, the kind of sign-off exchanged thousands of times a day between pilots and air traffic control. But at 1:21 a.m., something changed. The plane's transponder, the small device that constantly broadcasts its position, went silent. On the screens of civilian radar, MH370 simply disappeared at the boundary between Malaysia and Vietnam. No distress call, no sign of trouble, just a gap where a massive aircraft had been only seconds before. From that moment, one of the largest commercial jets in the world, carrying 239 people, was gone. Air traffic controllers hesitated, unsure if the jet had been handed off to the next sector or lost entirely. And in the Gulf of Southeast Asia, a mystery was born. While the radar screens showed nothing, the night sky may have told a different story. Because one man, working miles away on an oil rig, would later report a sight no instrument recorded: a giant aircraft burning across the horizon. Far from the bright lights of Kuala Lumpur or Beijing, an oil rig stood quietly in the Gulf of Thailand. On the night flight MH370 vanished, one man was out there, working under the dark sky, when he claimed he saw something unforgettable. His name was Mike McKay, a New Zealander stationed on the rig. According to his testimony, at roughly the same time MH370 disappeared from radar, he noticed a massive aircraft flying unusually low. But it wasn't just the altitude that caught his eye, it was the glow. He described the plane as burning across the night sky, lit up for 10 to 15 terrifying seconds before fading into the darkness. McKay did not stay silent. He wrote a detailed report, carefully recording the time, the angle, and he emailed the account to his company and sent copies to both Vietnamese and Malaysian authorities. This was not a rumor or a vague impression. It was a structured statement from a man trained to observe details in dangerous environments. Vietnamese officials later confirmed that his testimony was real. They even said it would be added to the ongoing investigation. For a brief moment, it looked as if the world finally had a concrete lead, a human eyewitness to events that no radar could explain. But then something strange happened. McKay's account quietly slipped from the headlines. It was never cited in official briefings, never followed by search vessels heading toward the coordinates he provided. To the frustration of many, it was as if his words had been erased before they could spark real action. Why would such a striking testimony be buried? Was it rejected because it didn't fit the timeline being built by authorities? Did investigators fear the implications of admitting the aircraft may have caught fire in mid-air? Or was there a conscious decision to silence a narrative that conflicted with emerging satellite data? For many, McKay's words remain one of the most haunting footnotes in the story of MH370. If true, they suggest the tragedy may have begun in flames over the Gulf of Thailand while officials were still looking in the wrong waters to the east. And so the chilling question lingers. Did Mike McKay really witness the final seconds of MH370 blazing through the night sky? And if he did, why did the world choose to look away instead of looking closer? When flight MH370 vanished from civilian radar, many assumed the Boeing 777 had simply disappeared. But that wasn't the full story. The plane was still being tracked, only this time by the Malaysian military. Their radar revealed something stunning. Instead of continuing on its scheduled path to Beijing, the aircraft made a sharp turn. It circled near the island of Penang, the hometown of Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, before banking westward. From there, it crossed the Strait of Malacca and pressed on toward the Andaman Sea. Then, just as suddenly, it slipped out of military coverage and into the unknown. For days, search teams scoured the wrong oceans, while officials hesitated to release this crucial data. And when the truth finally emerged, it only deepened the mystery, because while radar lost the aircraft, satellites kept listening. Like all modern airliners, MH370 carried a satellite communication system that sent routine signals, called handshakes, to a ground station. Even after its transponder went dark and radio silence fell, the plane kept whispering its existence. 7 times over nearly 6 hours, the satellite received these faint pings. They didn't reveal the plane's exact position, but they proved one shocking fact. MH370 was still in the air, flying long after the world thought it was gone. By analyzing these signals, calculating speed, fuel use, and distance from the satellite, investigators traced a likely path. The results pointed not north toward Asia, but far south, into one of the most remote stretches of the Indian Ocean. It suggested the aircraft had flown on in silence until its fuel was exhausted, ending somewhere along a lonely arc of sea thousands of miles from land. But here lies the haunting contradiction. If Mike McKay truly saw a burning aircraft in the Gulf of Thailand that night, how could the same plane have continued flying for hours afterward? Was he mistaken, or could there have been another explosion in the skies? Or is it possible that MH370 itself was damaged, even aflame, yet still able to keep flying until the very end? The radar tracks, the satellite handshakes, and the eyewitness account do not fit neatly together. Instead, they create a jagged puzzle, one that has resisted every attempt to solve it. And before the world even began analyzing those mysterious satellite pings, another disaster was already unfolding, this time on the ground. Because in the crucial first hours, Malaysian authorities made a series of mistakes so devastating they may have buried the truth forever. Malaysia's credibility suffered with each contradiction, and what should have been a united, data-driven mission turned political. Families watched officials disagree on basics, last contact times, headings, even the size of the search box, and every new map seemed to cancel the last. In that vacuum, speculation thrived, because silence always invites a story. For investigators, those early blunders became a case study in how not to manage an unfolding aviation crisis. Clear protocols, hard escalation triggers, and immediate military-civil cooperation are not luxuries. They are lifelines, and MH370 showed what happens when the rope is dropped. And when the search finally shifted south into the Indian Ocean, the truth did not arrive in the form of radar or satellite pings, but in something far more haunting. Fragments of the aircraft washing up on distant shores, carrying with them a story no official ever wanted to tell. In the critical first hours after MH370 vanished, confusion and hesitation reigned, and the response that should have been fast and surgical became slow and scattered. Instead of a single picture shared by everyone, there were competing versions of the truth that changed by the hour, and the search lost its most precious resource, time. Malaysia Airlines initially reassured air traffic control that the flight was still in the air, citing predictive software rather than live tracking. That confidence sounded comforting, yet it was built on projection, not proof, and it cost investigators the early momentum when a tight window might still have existed. Those hours cannot be rebuilt. They simply drained away. Meanwhile, a breakdown in handover procedure between Malaysian and Vietnamese controllers added a second failure point. Each unit assumed the other had contact with the jet, so neither pressed the alarm in real time, and no coordinated search grid was drawn when it mattered. Only 4 hours later did an official alert go out, by which time radar replays were being scrubbed and human memory was already fading. The most troubling revelation came from Malaysia's own military radar tapes. The system tracked a primary return, consistent with a large airliner, turning back across the peninsula, then running northwest toward the Andaman Sea, yet no warning was relayed to civil authorities. No fighters were scrambled, no aircraft were vectored to intercept. MH370 crossed Malaysian skies unchallenged before slipping into darkness. Even a single visual intercept could have fixed a heading, a speed, a fuel state, anything to anchor the timeline. Those failures sent the world to the wrong ocean. For the first 4 days, dozens of ships and aircraft scoured the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand, searching an empty grid because the assumptions pointed east when the jet had already gone west. Crews flew low over rough water, burning fuel and daylight while the true track curved away beyond their maps. The wasted effort was staggering and demoralizing. Vietnam, China, the Philippines, Australia, and the United States all pushed assets into an area that held no answers, spending millions of dollars and countless man-hours on a mirage. When the military replay finally surfaced and the search pivoted, that first clean shot at certainty had already slipped by. This misdirection shattered momentum and almost certainly erased any chance of rescue if life had remained on board. It also planted the seed that would grow into public mistrust. Was this only bureaucracy under stress, or was someone shaping the narrative to hide uncomfortable facts? Every walkback, every correction, every embarrassed press briefing deepened the doubt. For more than a year, the mystery of MH370 seemed frozen in time. No wreckage, no evidence, nothing but theories. Then, in July 2015, a startling discovery finally broke the silence. On a small beach of Réunion Island, east of Madagascar, locals stumbled upon a strange metallic object nearly 2 meters long. It was encrusted with barnacles, battered by the sea, but still intact. Experts quickly identified it, a flaperon, part of the wing of a Boeing 777. Serial numbers confirm the truth. The fragment belonged to MH370. For the first time, families had something tangible. The plane had indeed ended up in the Indian Ocean. But this discovery also opened new questions rather than closing old ones. In the months that followed, more debris began to appear. On the coasts of Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and even as far as Mauritius, over 30 pieces were recovered. Of these, at least 18 were deemed almost certain to be from MH370. Among them were wing fragments, engine cowling, cabin parts, and even a section of the vertical stabilizer. Yet none of these items told a clear, simple story. Tests revealed no signs of a large-scale explosion. Still, a few unidentifiable fragments carried faint burn marks, just enough to stir speculation. Had there been a fire on board, or were these scorch marks caused later by natural processes in the ocean? The biggest debate among experts centered not on the fire, but on how the aircraft entered the water. Some argued the Boeing had plunged in a high-speed, uncontrolled dive. If that were true, the wreckage should have been shattered into countless fragments. But the flaperon, one of the most delicate control surfaces of the wing, was still intact. That, to some, suggested something else, a controlled ditching, a deliberate landing on the water. This idea fed directly into the most chilling theory that Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, the veteran pilot, had guided the aircraft to its end. By attempting a controlled descent, he may have ensured the jet slipped into the ocean with minimal debris, making recovery nearly impossible. A methodical way to erase the plane forever. Oceanographers also weighed in. They studied the barnacles clinging to the flaperon, using their growth patterns to estimate how long the piece had been drifting. They mapped currents across the southern Indian Ocean, trying to backtrack the fragments to a likely crash site. But the sea is vast and merciless, and every calculation only widened the area of uncertainty. Instead of narrowing the mystery, the science of drift pushed the answers further away. For the families, each new fragment was a dagger of hope and pain. It was proof their loved one's plane had been real, that it had broken apart, but it was never enough to say why or where. A wing piece on a beach is not the same as a body to bury. It gave answers, but never closure. The wreckage fragments, instead of solving the riddle, became clues pointing in opposite directions. One possibility: chaos in the cockpit, a sudden loss of control, and a violent end. The other, a pilot's calm and deliberate decision to disappear. And hanging above it all was another haunting contradiction. If the plane had burned in midair, as oil rig worker Mike McKay swore he saw, why did the debris show so little evidence of fire? Had he witnessed another explosion that night, or was the truth about MH370's final moments being buried with every wave that carried a fragment to shore? The ocean had given back only pieces, but never the whole, and the fragments themselves whispered two different stories, one of disaster and one of intention. So the question remains, what really happened over the Gulf of Southeast Asia and the Indian Ocean? Did MH370 fall from the sky in chaos, or was it carefully landed to ensure it would never be found? And if McKay truly saw the plane burning, why do the pieces of MH370 tell such a different tale? As investigators pieced together fragments of debris and conflicting signals, a storm of theories erupted. Each one promised an explanation for MH370's disappearance, yet each one carried holes big enough to swallow the truth. The first and most obvious idea was technical failure. Could the aircraft have suffered a catastrophic event, like a lithium battery fire, a sudden loss of cabin pressure, or an electrical blaze? There was precedent. In 1998, Swissair Flight 111 was brought down by a cockpit fire that disabled communications, and in 2010, a UPS cargo jet was destroyed after lithium batteries ignited mid-flight. Such scenarios might explain a fire, even those faint burn marks found on debris. but they cannot explain the strange, deliberate turns the plane made after its system supposedly failed. If MH370 was crippled by accident, why did it fly so far, so deliberately for so long? That led to a darker possibility: pilot suicide. Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah, 53 years old, was respected and experienced, with more than 18,000 hours in the sky. Yet investigators later uncovered a simulated flight path on his personal computer, one that eerily mirrored the actual path of MH370, ending in the remote Indian Ocean. The plane's detour over Penang, Zahari's hometown, seemed to some like a silent farewell. And if the final descent was indeed controlled, as some experts believe, it could mean Zahari's last act was to ensure the aircraft vanished without a trace. But the idea of a veteran pilot deliberately murdering 238 people has never sat easily with those who knew him. His friends and family insist there were no signs of instability, no motive, no reason at all. Others pointed to hijacking. Could a passenger with aviation expertise have taken control? Investigators combed through the passenger list: engineers, tourists, families, but none seemed to have the knowledge or opportunity to fly a Boeing 777. The theory quickly collapsed under its own weight. Then came terrorism, the explanation that many instinctively considered in the first days after the disappearance. Was MH370 seized by extremists in the same way as September 11 or EgyptAir 990? But unlike those tragedies, no group ever stepped forward to claim responsibility, no manifesto was left behind, and no evidence was found of organized sabotage. Even intelligence agencies admitted that in every known terror attack, someone wanted the world to know who was responsible. Yet in this case, there was only silence. And of course, there were conspiracies. Some whispered that the plane was shot down by the US military, perhaps near the Diego Garcia base in the Indian Ocean. Others claimed the satellite data from Inmarsat was fabricated to mislead the world. There were even accusations that debris washing up on African beaches had been planted, staged to support an official narrative. No credible evidence supports any of these claims, yet the early confusion and mistakes by Malaysian authorities fueled suspicion. When governments fumble and contradict themselves, people begin to wonder what they're hiding. Amid all these theories, Mike McKay's testimony remains a ghost in the record. If he truly saw a burning plane in the Gulf of Thailand, it supports the fire hypothesis. But his account was never seriously pursued, buried almost as quickly as it surfaced, and with it may have gone the one clue that could have led searchers in the right direction. What remains clear is that every theory offers a piece of the puzzle, but none provide the full picture. A fire explains the flames, but not the flight path. Pilot suicide explains the turns, but not the faint burn marks. Terrorism explains intent, but not the silence. Each idea fits halfway and then breaks apart, leaving more questions than answers. And while experts debate, while officials argue, the true weight of the mystery is not carried by them. It is carried by the families, the ones who still wait, the ones who still hope for answers that never come. For the families of those on board MH370, the disappearance is not just a mystery. It is a wound that never heals. No wreckage to bury, no grave to visit, no final goodbye. They live each day with an absence that cannot be explained. Take Amanda Lawton, who lost both her parents on that fateful flight. Every interview, every vigil, she repeats the same plea to the world. Please don't give up. It is not just a request, it is a cry for dignity, for closure, for the truth that has been denied for more than a decade. Her words echo the frustration of hundreds of families who still do not know where their loved ones took their last breath. The pain is personal, but it is also public. How can a Boeing 777, one of the most advanced airliners ever built, simply vanish in an age where satellites track every ship, every phone, every movement on Earth? The unanswered question is not only a tragedy for the families, it is a scar on modern aviation itself. If a jet carrying 239 people can disappear without a trace, then what does that say about the systems designed to keep us safe? For the families, every headline about the greatest aviation mystery is not just a news story, it is their lives, frozen in time. Mike McKay's testimony, his claim of seeing a burning plane cross the night sky, stands as a symbol of everything ignored. Maybe he was right, maybe he was wrong, but the fact that his account was dismissed so quickly is a reminder of how fragile the search for truth can be. When fragments of evidence are overlooked, the story remains incomplete, and every family feels the weight of that neglect. For them, the silence of governments and the contradictions in official reports are almost as painful as the loss itself. After billions of dollars spent, countless ships deployed, and 10 long years of searching, MH370 has still not been found. All that remains are questions, scattered like the pieces of debris washed ashore in faraway lands. And the question that haunts every family member is this: have we been looking in the wrong place all along? They are left to wonder if the truth has been hidden, if mistakes were covered, or if the ocean simply swallowed the answers forever. The silence is deafening. Children have grown up without parents, parents have aged without closure, and partners have spent a decade waiting for an answer that never came. If even one man swears he saw the plane burning in the night, why has the world chosen not to listen? And if that testimony had been pursued, could the answers have been different? For the families, the question is no longer just where the plane is, it is why the truth keeps slipping away. More than 10 years later, Flight MH370 is still the greatest mystery in modern aviation. Radar tracks, satellite handshakes, scattered debris, all of it points in different directions, but never to the full truth. And then there is Mike McKay, the oil rig worker who swore he saw a plane burning across the night sky. His testimony was noted, then quietly forgotten. What if he was right? What if the very first clue, seen with the naked eye, was the one we should have followed? Instead, the world spent billions searching the wrong seas, chasing shadows while families waited for answers that never came. Did MH370 vanish in fire, or was it flown into oblivion on purpose? Until the wreckage is found, the question will never rest. And perhaps that is why the mystery of MH370 only grows louder with every passing year.